Bwana Chairman.
Good morning, Eric.
Karibu sana here.
Asante.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
It's good to see you on this end of the year.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And also congratulations. This is the year for you.
Thank you.
For appointments. How long have you been in office now?
2 months.
Like proper 2 months.
I mean, January and February.
Yeah.
I was appointed towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
And took oath of office, I think on 30th of December. And people found it unusual. I must tell you, even I was somewhat surprised that a chair has to take oath of office, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. And when you were inaugurated, you gave a speech.
That I did.
On what you think that Kenya Revenue Authority ought to do,
Indeed.
ought to be,
Indeed.
and how it ought to then be the agency that raises more revenue for government to spend. One of the things that you said was that KRA ought to then bring in people on board. And so people that can start, working with KRA and not see KRA as an enemy, but to see KRA as this partner for national growth and development.
Indeed.
Of course, this was informed by something, your own knowledge of having being in politics, having worked at the National Treasury, and having been a governor, of what people think about KRA. What was it that people told you they think about and they feel when they hear KRA?
Not unique to KRA, but tax authorities, tax agencies, or revenue services around the world most aim to move from being feared to being regarded as a service partner. And you can see why. That in the end, there can be no state if there are no taxes, because the state has no income of itself. And even when we borrow, borrowing is deferred tax, because at some point you will have to pay that loan, and that payment will come from the cash flow brought in by taxation. So, taxes is the foundation of any nation, of course, Kenya included. So I did know coming in that generally revenue services or tax authorities aim to be seen, to be trusted as partners and to be seen as a service organization. Probably one of the better known for doing so is the Swedish tax agency, which when you do surveys, the kind we do that ask, okay, who is the most trusted organization? Then the Swedish tax agency is often in top 10. Number 2, number 3, like that. Another well-regarded one is the Australian tax office. So coming in, I had a view and have the view that we as KRA should be moving from being seen as a feared tax authority to being regarded as a service organization, which is truly what we are. Okay.
We'll get into that conversation.
Indeed.
And we'll ask the people to engage you.
Indeed.
And to ask you direct questions about, how they interact with KRA, how KRA interacts with them, understanding of the various taxes that we have. In fact, when you're having this conversation and engaging with citizens, they'll tell you, very many of them will tell you, I actually do not know how many taxes I ought to pay until these KRA guys show up and they tell me, Ujalipa, so it's a penalty. But before we do that, our girl Janu is away, and she's been the one who does this thing that we are about to do, which is just looking at quotable quotes by people who have said something. I'm going to give you a quote, and I'm going to give you a couple of hints and ask you who said that. Today's quote is, leadership is a privilege to better the lives of others. It's not an opportunity to satisfy personal greed. Leadership.
Way.
Hey.
Right on the money. Hey. Didn't even take time to guess. Just right there.
How do you know that? Because you were there when he said it.
Well, I was there when he said it, and I also believe it myself. Somebody asked me, "Oh, how come you this is? Are you sure?" And I said, "Look, I'm absolutely sure that I want to serve as chair of KRA because I believe in what President Kibaki is saying. leadership is like a calling. It's an opportunity to do something useful for society. That's what I think it is. So yes.
All right. You started by saying, of course, you've given us examples of tax regimes elsewhere, and some of them that are considered the best in the world. And I think largely I do agree. I think I've had the privilege of sitting with the Finnish Tax Authority, and sat with them, and they had a survey that said 80% of Finns are happy to pay their taxes. Over 80, actually, it was over 80. And I said, how many? Happy to pay their taxes. So, of course, the natural thing was to interrogate why. It's that's very unusual coming from where I come from, where it's a pain. And they said the reason is it's not because of anything else except the efficiency, right, with which the money is used. They say, you know what, you take a good chunk of my money, but I see where it's going, so I'm happy to pay my taxes. This system works. Now, while policy is not KRA's mandate, compliance is. And I think a really big part of compliance for if people felt that their tax money was going somewhere and it was working for them, they would be a lot happier to comply. From where you sit, how do you fight that demon of this tax money is not being used efficiently, I don't want to pay? If I don't have to, I won't. If I can escape, I will.
Indeed, and let me start here. Globally, in fact, we talk about tax compliance pyramid. Because in almost all societies, the large segment of the population, they comply with tax obligations voluntarily. And it is not different in Kenya. In Kenya, I would say about 55%, maybe 60%. Comply voluntarily.
Voluntarily, okay.
Another 15, maybe 20%, their non-compliance is inadvertent.
Okay.
So it's not that they have sort of deliberately tried not to pay. It's a bit what Eric was saying, that if I don't know I have this particular obligation, then obviously I would not meet it because I don't know that I have this particular obligation.
All right.
Then a smaller portion need encouragement, like to be reminded this is what the legal obligation is. And it's only a very tiny, maybe 1%, if that, of citizens, taxpayers who are actively trying to avoid or to evade paying taxes. And you can see, for each of the segments, you can't really approach it with the same strategy. For voluntary compliance and inadvertent non-compliance, what you really want to do is make it easy and simple and as painless as possible for citizens, for our clients, to take up the responsibility. But to the heart of your question, we, certainly myself as chair of KRA, and we as a KRA fraternity, what we want to, or what we are saying to our clients is that, look, taxes, as I've already said, is the heart of everything. So any good thing that is happening in the public sector, whether at national or county level, all of it is from tax. And even if we have borrowed, as we often do as government, in the end, the cash flow to pay for that borrowing will come from tax. So the reality is that it is at the heart of everything. Now, obviously, the conversation about how best whatever taxes are, how best they are applied, and whether we can do better in the application. So this is the conversation on the expenditure side. And I have been very much on public record saying we should focus on the expenditure side much more than we do. And you see it every year. You see it this year again.
Yeah.
What gets most attention is the finance bill.
Yes.
Mainly because it contains the taxation measures, what is going to change in the level of taxes. Hardly do we spend time looking at the expenditure side and taking decisions on that side and debating those decisions say, look, can we apply these resources better? And I honestly think, and I hope this year, and perhaps going forward, more and more debate is focused on the expenditure side so that we make sure all resources that are mobilized are applied in the best way possible.
You know, the public knows KRA for collecting money.
Yes.
And the person who's collecting money, the public looks at the person who's collecting money so that they can go and use it to bring me services.
Indeed.
All right? The 80% of the Finns who are happy to pay tax,
yes,
they said they're happy to pay tax because they can see the quality of service that they receive.
Yes.
Now, you are just a collecting agency.
Indeed.
But your parent is the National Treasury, which also is the spender.
Is the
manager of the purse.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. The Treasury and Parliament are the decision makers on how it is spent.
Okay.
Proceed. Yes.
Now, how do you explain to the public that your role is only collecting?
No,
or are you saying that can KRA have any say on the expenditure? Can KRA have input on those things that you're saying? If we focus on expenditure, then it will make it easier for us to collect.
Well, KRA has some input. It's not the decision maker, but KRA definitely has some input. Because, for example, when we discuss what is the target for the year, what is it that we can expect to collect, that is a fairly detailed conversation, and it involves KRA. I mean, it's already in public domain. We quite often, the estimates from our parent, as you have called them, are a bit higher than what we as KRA estimate.
Able to collect.
So we have an input into the conversation. We are not the key decision maker. The key decision maker, really, if you examine the Constitution deeply, the key decision maker is the National Assembly.
Yeah.
However, the executive in its totality is a key driver of saying we want to spend here, here, and there. The National Assembly has immense power to say yes or no on those expenditure proposals. And that is the work of the not just the Budget Committee, but the National Assembly as a whole. Indeed.
So what we see is, like now, the budget-making process is nicely in Parliament. And your parent, the National Treasury, has gone to Parliament with a budget policy statement. It says, this is what we want to spend, which basically indicates how much expenditure there's going to be. And they also indicate, well, we estimate that our revenue are going to be this much.
Exactly.
Now, is the figure that's currently before Parliament the figure that KRA gave the National Treasury? When it
slightly
said,
higher than...
What has KRA told the National Treasury, based on its own experience, as its capacity to collect for the next financial year?
You know, we believe that revenue growth in the neighborhood of 12 to 15% is realistic.
Year on year.
Year on year. There are some years where the expectation is that we grow perhaps as much as 20%. So, you know, and that's based from historical experience of what has been practical to do. But if you broaden the conversation, how much you grow will be a function of several things. One is the economy itself growing? If it is, you can expect to collect a bit more. It will also be the taxation measures. So what is contained actually in the finance bill.
Yep.
And again, a big conversation to be had there because when we talk about tax predictability or policy predictability, part of the unpredictability is because we have measures that are adjusted every year.
Yep.
And we have to make up our minds ultimately are we sticking with a medium-term planning framework?
Right.
Or do we want to change every year? I personally favor
the medium term.
the medium term, so that businesses and all our clients can know and can plan better, because they know what is going to be this year and next year and the year after. So, but
let me remind you the question.
No, I'm trying to find this particular, to find the, shall I say, diplomatic way to put this particular
to bring the answer.
No, this particular
or
point.
Or you could just give us numbers. You could just say this is what we thought was possible.
Yes.
The expenditure decisions. I mean, who drives the expenditure decisions? What role could National Assembly play, or does it play, in that you're looking for a project for your constituency? So hardly is there any political constituency that is pushing to say spend less. The political constituency is pushing spend more. We need this road, we need this particular, and so on. So, and that is why, as I said, you tend to see every year the expectation is for growth closer to 20%, but the more realistic growth would be 12 to 15%.
So how much had you told the National Treasury that this would be our
if you take this year,
for this year?
For us, this year, our target is 2.685 trillion.
The current target.
The current target.
For the current financial year.
For the current financial year.
Right.
If you are to grow that...
That's the revised target.
That's the revised target.
What was the initial target at the beginning of the financial year?
It was closer to 2.9, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we start the year at 2.9. As we are heading towards
that is predicated. Yeah. That is based on what the revenue measures that were contained in the finance bill that was rejected by the Republic.
Okay.
It was also, of course, based on the expectation of something like 5.6% annual GDP growth. Yeah. So what government did, which is the correct thing to do, given that the Finance Bill 2024 was rejected by the Republic, was of course then to adjust. In my view, it should never have come to that particular point. But anyway, that's the way things turned out. And there were some adjustments. So there was a supplementary budget and so on to adjust figures to fit the new reality.
To fit a new reality.
Yes.
Then the reality is we are saying that the taxation for this year will be the same as the taxation for the previous year. With the rejection of the finance bill, basically you're saying that nothing is changing. More or less.
Okay, more or less.
All right.
But more by about 70 billion, because remember, in December, there was some fine-tuning of the tax law amendments, so tax procedures and so on. And we have an expectation that those measures will yield about that amount.
You know where I'm heading with all this question?
Tell me.
Is the area where we find ourselves with, at the beginning of our financial year, the government announcing that our tax estimates are this figure, and by the time we are closing the year, the tax estimates have reduced. But the expenditure estimates have not.
Indeed. And isn't that the point, Eric?
And then we end up here with a KRA that does, if we go by the initial target, KRA does not meet that initial target. And even when we go by the revised target, then KRA does not meet that revised target 100%. It still operates slightly below target. Well, so we have a KRA that does not meet the revenue collection targets.
Well, it's a very harsh way of looking at us, but we expect certainly this year to meet our revenue target. And if you look, say, historically, there are years, in fact, that we have surpassed revenue target. I think it was 2021, 2022.
How was the first quarter of this financial year, performance-wise?
Let me go with a number that is off the top of my head. By mid-year, so the first 6 months, we were down about 55 billion.
Off target.
Yes, below target. In January, we were just shy. We were like $1 billion less than where we wanted to be. So that's like 99 point something % of target. February, we did slightly worse because we were 18 below where we wanted to be. We expect March to be, and if you look at the way the numbers have gone, for the last several days, you can see that we are more likely to be on target in March. And because of the tax amnesty, as well as some of those measures that were enacted in December, we fully expect to recover the position. And let me just speak briefly to the issue of the tax amnesty. So that, now, it's not the first time. This is, in a sense, a second installment of the tax amnesty. And the way it is, if you have a backlog, if you have tax arrears for periods up to December 2023, then approach KRA so that the penalties and interest that are applicable to to those tax arrears can then be waived. And so far, up to about the third week of February, I think we were nearly 4 billion from about 25,000 taxpayers, and we encourage taxpayers. It goes up to June 30th. Take advantage of it. I should also say, you said feared. Eric,
loathed. I can change it from feared to loathed.
KRA
is loathed by the public.
No, I want us to change it to respected, trusted.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to explain is that even if you don't have the amount in one installment to clear your tax arrears, it's no reason for you to run away from us. Come and present to us a payment plan, and in all likelihood, we'll accept and allow you to go with that payment plan. As a matter of fact, Eric, we're going further to talk with financial institutions, enter MOUs with them and so on, so that banks and financial institutions should support the business community
in tax compliance.
To take advantage of this particular, in tax compliance generally, but to take advantage of the amnesty. Because the penalties and interest can actually be quite a hefty amount.
They can.
Indeed.
I sometimes feel that it is not accidental that the penalties and interests get to these hefty amounts, because when we knew we were hosting you today, so when you're just having conversations with people, one of the things that came out was KRA has the back end of my taxes. For example, here I know that my employer deducts this for payee, this for that, this for shift, this for all of that, right? If they're not remitting that to KRA, KRA knows. I don't. My paycheck, my salary will come less that money, right? But KRA will not tell me until I have accrued penalties and interests that are now too big to deal with, right? And I think sometimes that is to encourage either a different way of doing things, if you understand. It's so that someone has to be there to help you sort that problem, or to make it so that it is now an unbearably large tax burden. Can you speak to that? Because every month that goes by and someone is not tax compliant, the Revenue Authority knows, whether it's a business, whether it's an individual. So why wait until the penalties and the penalties are huge and could now potentially bring down a business or even individual finances?
Well, absolutely. And you see, that is a transformation that KRA is going through. Just to give you an example of e-teams. See, what we are trying to do broadly is to use technology to make it easier, better, less painful for the clients to comply. That is about ensuring that you can access your profile, you can see what are your liabilities and where you stand.
I can do that on e-teams.
E-teams is an example. You can do that on your iTax profile.
Okay, on your iTax. I was about to be very surprised. Okay.
No. What I want to, the reason I want to use e-teams is to explain this. E-teams, when you're buying things for your business, you buy and you get a tax receipt, that is populating your ledger. When you sell things, and again you're issuing tax receipts, that is populating your ledger. So at any given time, you can simply go as a business to your tax profile, and you will see your ledger, showing what you have paid out in VAT and what customers are paying, and you see you only deal with the net position, and it makes it, it brings down your cost of compliance. It brings down the cost of, how many people do you need, working out what is your VAT and so on and so on. And that is what is making, as a matter of fact, in December and January, we did very well with VAT once eTIMS was rolled out. And what we're doing with it even now is to continue to simplify it so that we make it easier. And, allow me to go deeper into it like this. Think about the VAT threshold. It is 5 million shillings per year. That is about 420,000 shillings in revenue per month. Now, if you have to hire an accounts officer to do, how much can you pay?
Right.
Even if you paid them part-time, let's say 20,000, that would be 5% of your revenue.
Yeah.
Which is a very big disincentive for you to comply.
Yep.
So, and that is why we are pushing harder on technology, so that now you, as the owner of a kiosk, you don't need to go and employ an accountant in order to have somebody who is filling out those VAT returns. We use technology. And I want to remind viewers that it's not that because you have issued what we are calling a tax receipt, that implies that you're paying. That's not what it implies. It is a way to populate your ledger so that it is auto-populating it, and it makes it easier for you. Right. You just check. If you agree with it, you click, and that's it.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Yes.
When KRA started rolling out eTIMS, it's the same language that was said. But that thing was complicated then.
Just about to
it's
say.
Complicated now. How many people actually understand the eTIMS? There's a USSD code for eTIMS. There's a platform for eTIMS. Go to eCitizen and eTIMS. There's eTIMS Uware on the website. In fact,
I have a story.
The chairman, you have a story?
Yeah. When we come back from the break,
you'll tell us the story.
I'll tell you.
As we go to this story, let's actually listen to the chairman of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Ndiritu Muriithi, who was talking about the complexity of the system that KRA operates and the need to simplify that system. That clip, let's hear it, and then we go to a break. We come back, we start reading the questions to the chairman of KRA.
We do come under some criticism that do we have too many systems internally here that then can create some difficulties, particularly if they are not talking to each other. And I think we are guilty there, that we need fewer systems that operate seamlessly, that talk to each other, and have a common platform, API-type platform, that our clients then are able to integrate with us. So I would say we did well to embrace technology, but perhaps we did it in a traditional way, where different teams will then, so you end up with a multiplicity of systems, and we're not always talking to each other. Now, our current transformation effort is to move from that to fewer systems that are seamlessly working.
So this is what you said. We'll take a break and come back, and then
I was looking at 56%.
We'll also talk about that.
We'll talk about
the issues, the public perception about KRA, whether it's just an employment vehicle for political reasons and all. But let's take a break. We'll be back shortly. It's 24 minutes to 8. Throw in your questions. Let's just call it that. Throw in your questions onto YouTube, Facebook, X, TikTok, where we're live streaming, and we'll open up the phone lines at some point so that you can speak to the chairman of KRA, Ndiritu Muriithi. Back shortly. There are very, very many questions, Chairman, on social media. We'll get into them shortly. Mariam, you had a story, and this is your experience with iTax.
With eTIMS, yeah.
Yes.
So when eTIMS came out, just trying to be a tax compliant citizen, I'm like, okay. And with the communication that was out, it was something you could do by yourself. And I'm like, okay, I'm a capable person. Get on the laptop, try to onboard. And it was so complicated. I'm just like, what is happening? I don't understand. From the basics, after registering, you know, once you put in your KRA pin and your password, hapo ni sawa. After that, I can't. Where do you go to register what? What is what is considered a service? What band am I in? Like, there's so many things that you just don't understand. And if you don't have enough public participation, it's so hard. So I kept on trying for like 2-3 days. I'm like, this thing, kama imenishinda. If I am the dumb one, let me go ask for help. So I called, and even as they're walking me through it on the phone, still couldn't get to it. So I had to come to the JKOT Tower's offices, and to their credit, the KRA staff there are very helpful. But even them at some point, we're struggling together because they're like, what is it that you want? Because of course you could be in formal employment, but you do some other things on the side. Those are the things that you now want to, those services you want to register. So it's like, what exactly is it that you do? We search for it alphabetically. No. Search for every other name, Haiko code. So we're like, okay, let's maybe register the next closest thing. And it's like, sour, let's do that. And I remember even after that, they helped me generate the first like invoice. I was like, okay, will I remember this? I really tried to remember. Second time, you remember by chance. But if I need to now register something new, it's a whole other game. I need to start afresh and learn. So my thing is, to the chair, ease of compliance. Ease of compliance. It shouldn't be this difficult to either use eTIMS or to even get on your iTax, to just comply, to issue a receipt, like V22, compliance, ease.
Indeed. We have some work going on right now. You know, a large team.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, this is the part that really made me laugh when I got to the JKOT Towers. I thought I was the stupid one. I meet so many fellow creators. I'm like, kumbe tulikuwa tunakuja meeting. KRA na mkuniambia, umekuja panya, nimekuja eTIMS. Umekuja nimekuja. It's so fun. But go on.
We have a work process right now on simplification of eTIMS. And as a matter of fact, overall, if you look at our corporate strategy, is simplifying tax processes, simplifying how you do it. Because we agree with you. We agree with our clients that our systems should not be hard to use. Our systems should make it easy to use, and that will be a continuous process of improving our systems so that they are more responsive. You know, when we were off here, you asked me, have I used it? I have used eTIMS. Remember, you know, as chair, I'm not a full-time employee of the organization. I run an advisory business. So even I have to issue eTIMS invoices and so on. I had my own particular experience with it because one particular client thought that the withholding tax would appear in the tax invoice, and it doesn't.
Right.
Because remember, eTIMS is about VAT. So my client was saying, well, why isn't it showing? You know, I had, you know, a colleague who made a mistake in the invoice. So now, you know, there is no functionality to amend or cancel. The way to cancel is to issue a credit note. And at that time, the way the interface was of eTIMS, you needed to look elsewhere to find the credit note that you're going to use to reverse, if you will, the invoice. But we have since made it a bit easier so that right there on that invoice, you can see the function of creating a credit note, which reverses or cancels that erroneous invoice. So work in progress. On the positive side, many organizations are truly reporting that it is making it way easier and there are less mistakes. And even for us, when we now deal with issues like VAT refunds and so on, the system is making it easier for everyone, and we will continue to improve it. And we welcome feedback from users of e-Teams, so that we, as we continue to improve it.
Okay. Eric, I know you want to ask him something.
Ask.
There was something that someone asked, actually. It was Jackso who was asking, asking for a friend. Why is it, for example, you go into a supermarket, you buy your unga, your loaf of bread, your milk, you pay, you drop the receipt accidentally, yeah? Then as you're exiting, mwizi. It's like, no, I paid, I just dropped the receipt, for example, right? Same thing with taxation. Like the burden of proof, quote unquote, is put on you because you have to file your returns at the end of the year. Not burden of proof, but you understand the work, is still put on individuals. And to his point, I think there's nations working towards a fully automated tax system where if it has been withdrawn, it has been, if the money was paid, it was paid. I don't have to come and tell KRA that it was paid, right? If pay was paid, it was paid. If VAT was paid, it was paid. If the withholding tax was paid, it was paid. So
Indeed. And you asked earlier about this pay as you earn and why is the responsibility on you, the individual, not the employer. Well, it's because the employer is actually an agent. The responsibility...
This is in the case of non-remittance?
Pay as you earn.
Okay.
Pay as you earn is an obligation on the individual. However, the employer is a designated agent to collect. So the responsibility is on the individual. But I take your feedback that we as KRA ought to know if this particular employer is not remitting your
pay as
you earn. And we need to resolve that. As a matter of fact, again, we have some work going on because we noticed some of the reconciliation, for example, with counties was taking too long. So that county employees are finding, I thought yet remittance has been done, reconciliation at the back end was not happening in real time, mainly because of how counties pay.
So can we get
then central bank.
Can we get an alert system of sorts?
Well, absolutely. I think that's a great idea that alerts the individual what it is.
And then,
can it be done? The point you're saying is like it should be paid at source.
And the reconciliation
should happen.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have all this information.
It is happening.
When I've paid, you know when I've not paid.
It is. Let me give you an example. In betting, the split for taxes is happening at the transaction level. And what happened is dramatic increase, first of all, in the taxes that we're collecting. In the first year, I think we were up 26%. Something like, say, we were up 26%. So when the betting is going on and winnings and what have you, at the transaction itself, since the tax is known, it is split and remitted so that, and for betting companies, they found it was an incredible way of time saving and also for those who are participating in that process. So is it possible? My answer is yes. And when you hear us talking about digital transformation of KRA, it is the move for that to happen, not just in the case of betting, but across all transactions. And as we move there, what you will find is in exactly what you're saying, that KRA ought to rely more on data and data analytics. KRA ought to be able to see, and they are seeing my profile, make it easier for me as a taxpayer to see my profile, but also use that data to do the things that should happen that make it easier for me.
I think so. I think I should only be coming in if there's a discrepancy somewhere.
Absolutely.
If there's something I don't agree with.
You should be aware, and many of the people who are talking here are talking about just lack of awareness of taxation and lack of awareness of their obligations with KRA. Okay? So if you already have, because you registered my PIN, then you have my details. And you have an email that's associated with that. Right? There's nothing really that stops KRA from getting my phone line as well, associated with my PIN. And sending me notifications on my mobile phone. So that I know if my employer has remitted, just let me know. Remind me that, what's the date for the the deadline for submission of pay, is it 15th or whatever?
Yes.
Remind me that it's 20th, it's the PIN. Remind me that I have obligations to file. Because we operate on a mobile device, Chairman.
Yes.
And if all these other mobile network operators are sending us notifications, why can't KRA send me notifications?
I think that's...
Secondly, training and just creating awareness.
Absolutely.
So the last time I had a conversation with somebody from KRA, asked the question about training. So how do I know my tax obligations? How do I know to use these systems? How to log on to iTax? How to request for a tax compliance certificate, or how to file my returns? How do I know how to use eTIMS? And they said, you know, we usually send emails for you to attend training. And the training is, you know, every so often, every 2 weeks, you can attend training. There's some virtual training, or you can come to our KRA offices. Boss,
I hear you. I mean,
this is just making KRA just out of reach.
Eric, let's start here.
Let's start.
Okay. Which is like this. Perhaps it's only in recent years that KRA is sending emails. Okay?
Yeah.
I also... my personal belief is that when you see an email there saying KRA, it's not the first email that you open.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we are trying to do is repair that relationship with you, our clients, so that that email is not threatening to you, and it is actually often inviting you to some kind of training. But I hear you. How can we do taxpayer education better? Can we use mobile to alert, for example, on this question of pay as you earn, and any other obligation? So the answer to you is yes, we can and we will. What we really want to explain to Kenyans as we go through this process of transforming KRA, and you will see, you know, there will be, because Kenya, we are quite litigious. What is the word?
Litigious.
That one. You know,
Tunapenda koti.
You know, just the other day, because we are doing a restructuring. Now, our reorganization, we want to organize ourselves better. But you saw some people going to court to say, to ask court to stop us from reorganizing ourselves so that we can serve you better. Okay? I mean, frankly, I was a bit disappointed myself because, you know, when the organizations that were trying to stop us went to court, on day one, they got ex parte orders, meaning the judge had not listened to us, he just listened to that side and said, stop. Okay, granted, when we ourselves then made it to court, the judge again said, okay, now I hear both sides, proceed, and then let us go into the case itself. So you will expect that kind of resistance to change. However, KRA Board, our parent, as Eric called Treasury, we are determined to reform, to improve KRA so that it can do these things that we're talking about here better. And, you know, we also want to remind really clients that and Eric spoke about it as though it's negative. Me, I believe it's a very positive thing that we are creating multiple channels for which you can access, for example, the eTIMS profile, but multiple channels for which you can reach us. A traditional one is a KRA contact center, as everybody else does, and I hope citizens know that they can call 0711 099 999, which is a 24/7 operation to respond.
Let's give it again, 0711?
0711 099 999, so 999.
Okay.
It's a call center, and, you know, to respond to clients 24/7. Work in progress, but we are absolutely headed in the right direction.
We'll play a couple of sound bites because we went across the country and asked people what their views are about KRA and what they feel about KRA. We're going to play that shortly, but let me just read a couple of comments on YouTube.
Okay.
Sakina says, would be very glad to pay taxes, but we avoid because we don't see it benefit. If our taxes were utilized in resolving issues regarding health, education, roads, but instead the government misuses it. We feel very suffocated. There are no jobs or sustainable income to continue employing or running businesses in the country. And what chases even investors is the exorbitant amount of taxes. Ian Muli says, even if all income earnings individuals give 100% of their earnings to KRA as tax, nothing will change. Kenya doesn't have a revenue problem. We have an expenditure problem. I'm going to skip so that I can just align all these comments that look alike. Ian Muli says, so long as the taxman does not care about how tax revenues are spent, tax avoidance and evading shall be a duty. Kenyans are tired of pouring money down the drain. That is KRA. Okay?
Can I respond to this real quick?
M says, this revenue discussion is a very difficult one. We are not having the expenditure one concurrently. Why? Because we pay taxes and still pay for services directly. SHA, SHIF, garbage, school fees, watchmen, etc., etc.
Can I attempt to do this real quick? Let me start with Sakina. Benefits are not seen. I want to go back to my very first presentation. Everything that happens in the Republic is about tax. If there is a school, now we can debate whether the school is quality or not, but if there is a school, a primary school, a secondary school, a university, a college, it is tax. There is no other place that government gets money. If there is a hospital anywhere in Kenya today, it has come from tax. Yeah? If there is a road, now, and I said again, you can say, oh, but you borrow. Yes, we borrow as government, but the payment of that debt
is tax.
Is tax.
Chairman, that's Sakina's argument.
Yeah, I mean, it is the argument.
Is value for money.
Yes, he's saying benefits are not seen.
Yeah.
And my argument is that benefits are seen, and yes, we can go into now value for money. Is that the best highway, or is it in the best way that could have been done? I wanted to finish my train of thought to say, even where donors are involved, remember, those donors themselves are taxing somebody in their country in order to give you that donation. In the end, it's about tax. So, should we debate the quality of the service, the quality of the road, the quality of the hospital, the quality of the education? We should. Nonetheless, all that you can see in the Republic comes from tax. So benefits are there. The quality of benefit is the realm of...
That is what all those comments that I've read
are about.
They are all about...
Quality.
We pay tax and we feel the quality coming out.
Right.
Yes.
Answer that before we take this break.
And just before you answer, let me paint a picture for you.
Okay.
Over the last year, we've migrated from the last 2 years, NHIF to SHIF.
Yes.
A lot of people are saying, I go to hospital, I can't get services with SHIF. Some are saying it's been fantastic. A good number are also saying, I'm not able to get quality healthcare. Private hospitals are saying we're not taking anyone who's paying SHIF because we have pending bills from NHIF, all of that, right? Fine. Education sector, again, higher education. Higher education is out of reach for a lot of people. The funding model is just not working. Now we've reverted back to the old funding model. Fine. Schools are not receiving capitations. Fine. That's all taxpayer money. Ideally, that should be funding these things. So even if it's not a KRA, it's not KRA making the policy, from the collection point, Sakina is saying, I don't see how the tax is working for me. I can't get an education up to higher education at an affordable price or for free. I can't get healthcare. I don't know when was the last time someone built a new road. So from my end, paying tax is it's a burden on me.
Yes, and that's what we are trying to persuade Sakina differently. That take SHIF and moving from NHIF to a reform intended to make it work better, because we did have difficulties with NHIF. Those difficulties had to do with its business model. They had to do with what we say in English, adverse selection. It's like people pay only when they get sick, which means by definition, the insurance pool is not enough to pay.
Yeah.
Have we resolved all those issues? I don't think so. I think it is work in progress. The resolution of the issues, in part, is like the KRA question or the tax question is about ease of payment. If you make it easy for me to pay, there is much more likelihood that I will pay. The question of the value for money, the question of the quality of the service, it's now a question of governance, which is a perennial Kenya issue that we have to do better. That at each level of government, how do we, and I agree, I think it was Ian Muli who says, we have more an expenditure problem than a revenue problem.
Yes.
That we have to be less wasteful with the way we are spending. We have to ensure that we are getting value for money. I am on record saying, for example, I believe we should do something we call zero-based budgeting. Because when I look at the budget, I see many little programs, some big, some small, that frankly should not exist. Because they were created for a particular purpose, and that purpose is now no longer relevant, so we should remove it. Eric.
We need to take this break. Okay. So we take the break, we come back, we'll open the phone lines. You can engage the chairman of KRA directly. He is Ndiritu Muriithi, he's here with us. We are, bringing out the taxman to meet the people and to speak to the people and to respond to issues. Chairman, I think the basic response here is that KRA, the same way you are as zealous in talking to us about how much we ought to raise revenue and pay, you should be as zealous in talking to the executive and telling them, if you do not improve your expenditure, you will hamper my job of collecting for you. That's what the citizens are telling you. If you just think about the totality of here, is that KRA should care.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do care.
Okay. We'll be back shortly. It's 3 minutes after 8. On to the third hour of this Fixing the Nation. One conversation at a time. Today's conversation is on revenue collection by government, and that's why the taxman is here. The chairman of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Ndiritu Muriithi, is our guest. This hour, we are going to open up the phone lines for you to call in, and also we take all these questions that have been posted on social media and very many others that we actually went yesterday and spoke to the people, and they raised questions and concerns. So we'll get straight into them. Quick fire. You have the first one. That's right. Oh, our number, by the way, if you want to call in, is 0719 038 858. Let me say it slowly, 0719 038 858. All right, on YouTube, quite a number of questions coming in, but Willie Mayoli is asking, can the taxman talk about the weaponizing of KRA as a political tool used to fight political opponents by those against government?
I know that in the last campaigns, this became a campaign issue, and I want to say to Willie, the answer is no. We are not weaponizing KRA. For instance, just now, we have tightened quite a bit on the customs side, and you can expect, we already have people complaining, part of political elite complaining, including people in government complaining, we are tightening across board. And I really want to say to all Kenyans, look, on the across all tax lines, but we have a specific focus on customs, and we are tightening. It is not to single out.
Here is that there are no holy cows.
There are no sacred cows.
Sacred cows.
Yes.
All right, no sacred cows. Okay, hoping that's the case. Some people's tax problems seem to disappear when they are close to power.
Yes.
And then they seem to be in problems when they are away from
on the other side.
On the other side, yes.
We are treating all our clients the same way. And I really want to plead with Kenyans, if you have an issue about taxes, approach KRA. Our attitude is one of being of help to the client. We're trying to be more customer-centric. So approach us, and you will find that we are very, very helpful indeed.
A question was asked earlier, and it's still valid. KRA in the last 2 years went on a hiring spree. And then the public conversation came up that KRA was actually hiring people in a huge queue from one region of Kenya.
We did have some difficulties. And I think that's partly what led to board changes. We did have some difficulties, but a stumble is not a fall. we are back on track. As board, in recent, just in the last couple of weeks, we did ask for an updated review or audit, so as for us to be certain about the ethnicity or ethnic composition of our team. KRA is for all Kenyans, and certainly under my watch, that is the way it's going to be.
So when do you expect the report? Yeah. Sorry, when do you expect the report?
Next board, which is next week Thursday.
Currently, do you have numbers as of the last report?
Yeah, you see, that 56% number that was saying we are just from, the staff are from two communities. So what we want is an entire, our assessment of where actually we are, and next week Thursday.
When you get a report and it actually confirms that over half of KRA employees are from only two ethnic communities, what are you likely to do?
What I'm likely to do is that the hiring going forward will redress that imbalance, if indeed there is a rebalance, an imbalance. You should also know, of course, that part of that reorganization I spoke about, there are way too many people, managers, supervisors, way too many people in acting capacity. So we are moving forward to stabilize the organization by ensuring that people are employed, shall I say properly, what is the right word to, that if we are employing you full-time, we should employ you full-time. And I can tell you, we will take a great deal of care to ensure that our workforce is balanced.
Okay. Some positives here before we come to another question. And the first positive is coming from Nyakeri Brian, who says, let's give the devil its dues. Without collection, would be in more debt. KRA has digitized, overseen revenue growth and economic support and simplified operations. The other one is from David Muriithi. He's a creative DJ Delight. He says, I'll give KRA credit for improving e-teams by providing for the pre-filled spreadsheet, keying in all the details preciously. I think previously used to traumatize me. Keep at it, simplifying it even more, as Mariam has said.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, here's an issue. Really, Taxman should tell us why we don't have the tax procedure and the rates available for all in a simplified state. Getting the codes and one needs connection. The Tax Act should be as simple as ABC.
And I could not agree with Willie more. As a matter of fact, I had a focus group of taxpayers from Laikipia and Nakuru on the weekend. And this is one of the issues they raised. They said, look, it should even be in mother tongue, if that's what I can understand.
Yeah.
I could not agree with you more. I want to re-emphasize that when we are talking about KRA moving forward, this issue of simplifying this, or the procedures of making it as easy as practical, of going towards the transaction, so that you actually pay passively, that you don't, it's not something you're going to do.
Right.
That's the direction we're moving.
All right. Kimari, who's the big hat on X, asks, too long ago, you, Ndiritu, wrote an article on Nation.Africa stating that KRA was stifling economic development. Do you still hold that position?
Oh, I think you would have to read the rest of the article. It's not just that KRA. The article argued that if you overtax and if you crowd out the private sector from the credit market, then in fact you are striving growth. And yes, that is my view. It is a professional view, and it is exactly like that. Okay. That government, let me repeat, for emphasis, when government borrows, we must take great care not to crowd out the private sector. And when we tax, because tax is a cost, we must take great care not to overtax. So you have had the minister the other day when we were doing Bunge la Wananchi committing that we are not going to raid pay slips any further. As a matter of fact, moving forward, we should be looking at how to ease the pressure that is on pay slips. How are we doing that? By expanding the tax base, meaning that more and more of us participate in this responsibility.
Right. And we'll talk about that expansion in just a little bit, but I know we have a caller online. Who is it, Jackso? Philip is online, wants to ask a question to the KRA chair, Ndiritu Muriithi. Morning, Philip. Philip? All right. I think we've lost him on the line, but hopefully we'll get him back. There's still more questions. And I want to pick up on that expansion of the tax base because a lot of people, especially those with pay slips, do feel like they carry the tax burden. As much as every Kenyan pays taxes, it does feel like the tax burden is heavily on salaried people. And with every new deduction, you slip further and further down your pay rank, etc. You're making less, taking home less. So yeah, how do we expand the tax base? What are the plans?
Three. Let me say three real quick. The first thing is using technology. Right. And we've spoken to this point already. Just to repeat, it's using technology to make it easier for everybody to pay. And I gave you the example, for example, on this VAT threshold. We have reorganized ourselves internally to create a department, a revenue department headed by a commissioner focusing on small and micro business, or what generally Kenyans we have been calling informal. Yeah. But I want to point out, perhaps that lens of saying informal has blinded us. You see, there's nothing informal about what we do. Even if I'm selling maize downstairs, probably my customers are paying me using mobile money. There's nothing informal about that. What KRA and all of us should focus on doing, how can we rely on technology to make it plausible for that person in that transaction to contribute however little it is into the tax kitty. So technology is a big one. Number two, on the people side, it is reorganizing ourselves so that we have a dedicated team under, when we have appointed an acting commissioner for it, so that we are moving in that direction. I want to finish that by saying like this. If you say, well, how many pins exist? It's like more than 20 million.
Registered pins.
Yeah, registered pins. But how many are active, meaning that they file something? 10 million or just under 10 million. Now, of those, how many file nil returns? Maybe as many as half are filing nil returns. So you can see, to her point, that, well, it is these 3 million people, 4 million people who are formal companies and people with pay slips that are feeling their weight. And that's exactly the point. Well, the question is, of the nil filers, how do we convert minimal of them to pick up tax obligations? And on the broader point, these inactive, of course, they could be students, they could be whoever, but nonetheless, how do we get minimal from that population of inactive to active taxpayers? So that's what tax-based expansion is all about.
Okay. We will play some sound bites from the people that we spoke to yesterday. And as Wageshi is queuing that, I'm going to throw in a spanner here that's been asked by two people, Moses Gayo and Rick Mbua. So when you go onto eCitizen, now there are very many government services that have been digitized. And we pay to one pay bill, 222. And those then are collected singularly by government. Does KRA come into any of this point in the interface?
Not generally. You know, there are two, shall I say, forms of payment by citizens to government. One is tax. Like, think about property tax or income tax and so on. The other is a fee for service. There are many government services, at both levels of government, that are for pay. In the accounting, you will see something called ministerial appropriations in aid, meaning you have paid, I don't know, to renew your driving license, or you have paid for another service. To renew your pass, not duty, not duty.
Oh, these services.
Services.
Like renewal of license.
Like a renewal of license or something like that.
Okay.
And those services, and the payments for those services is what is on the eCitizen platform. Taxes, income tax. So when we
pay, does KRA collect on behalf of all these entities now that there's a unified payment?
No, ministerial, again, let's be clear.
Who runs the 2222?
The specific 2222 is simply a channel, a payment channel.
Okay.
The payment belongs to the owner of the service. That's why you'll see even county governments are on eCitizen. The payment goes to the owner of the...
Directly
to the owner of the service.
This is the question then. Rick Mbu was asking, what about the eCitizen? Where does our money go? We are actually confused. And the other question...
To the owners of the services available on eCitizen.
So he was telling me, Eric, can you ask the guest the issue of eCitizen and who owns it, and does the money collected go through the system to go to the treasury?
Again,
we demand answers, not stories.
Yes, I like that, citizen. We must get answers. Again, let's talk about renewal of driving license or motor vehicle,
or entry to the national park,
Yes. That entry to that fee goes to KWS, who is a provider of that service. The eCitizen platform is a channel through which you are using to pay to the organizations, institutions that are the owners of that service.
All right. Wageshi, do we have, Jackson, do we have the Vox Pops? Yes, we have the views. We asked people what they think about KRA and whether they have questions. Take a listen.
Iletwe kwetu tuichambue, na sababu already tunajua iko juu, tutaikataa kwa sababu kila kitu fuel ina hike. Ukiangalia sasa kama ni tukienda kununua kama ni mafuta, sasa itakuwa iko bei ya juu kwa sababu wanataka kurecover hiyo pesa. Unaona? Na ile nyingi ni yenye hata iko kwa mifuko yao wanaiba.
Mimi sipendi maandamano, lakini kikufikisha mwisho unashindwa kila ya kufanya. Kwa hivyo utapata mwananchi tu mwenyewe anatoka, sio bila kulasimishwa, hata bila kubangiwa. Unajitoa tu, unaona kama ni kukufa sasa, sitakufa kwa nyumba.
My name is Patrick Mtua, a resident of Mombasa. My question to the KRA chair is I'm going even to ask before even I go to the KRA chair, because in the beginning, the president of this country, Mr. William Ruto, told us there's not going to be any affordable housing taxes. But just recently, we had the CS for housing. Yeah, she told us that that's a tax. So I want to ask my question to the chair of KRA. When did this, was it called an allowance or what? When did it turn out to be a tax again to Kenyans?
Mimi ni Dalmas Yura, mkazi wa hapa Mombasa. Na niko hapa niulize swali tu kwa bwana chair ya kwamba naamini uko ofisini leo ku-execute ahadi zile ambazo rais aliweka wakati wa campaign. Na mojawapo wakati wa campaign alipokuwa anatafuta kuwa rais ni kwamba alikuwa atahakikisha zile ambazo ni ushuru ambazo ziko kwa fuel levy zitaondolewa, zitapunguzwa ili fuel ikuwe affordable, ikuwe cheap na mambo ya uchumi yaweze kuendelea vizuri. Kufikia sasa hakuna kitu imefanyika. Instead mambo mengi hata imeongezwa, VAT iliongezwa, ambao sasa tunaona hiyo imeleta mzigo zaidi, maisha yamekuwa magumu. Sasa swali langu ni lini hizi maushuru ambazo ziliongezwa zitarudishwa chini kuendana na ahadi ya rais aliyoiweka wakati wa campaign?
You're at a very precarious position to answer this question. You were chairing the campaign of the opposition when your current boss was making those promises.
Indeed.
Okay.
I start with the gentleman who says maandamano. Well, firstly, I must tell you, citizens, picketing and that is your constitutional right. Yeah, and therefore nobody should ever attempt to tell you differently. It is your right. We should debate, as we are doing right now, about taxes, about policies, about the direction of our country. We should debate openly. That's what democracy means. But nonetheless, maandamano is part of the. Those are your fundamental rights.
So it's our democracy.
Yes. Fuel high, are people stealing? Two things to say there. Indeed, fuel prices have been high, partly because of taxation, but also driven by international fuel prices. And you've seen, as international fuel prices dropped a little bit, you have seen some relief at the pump. Are people stealing? No, I would like to say really to the nation that, look, if you want to accuse my staff, accuse them with some evidence. Because it's not quite fair to just look at somebody and say, Miriam, I think you are like, accuse them, be ready to put evidence on the table. Do we take action? Of course we do. There's a reporting platform called iWhistle.
Okay. Where is that?
And if you just go online, it's called iWhistle.
Is it on the KRA website or it's a separate platform?
iWhistle.
Yeah, if you Google iWhistle, you will find it. And iWhistle, so you report anonymously.
Yeah.
That's really the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And last financial year, we had something in excess of 800 reports. I mean, even long before I got there. Those reports led us to recover nearly, I think nearly 4 billion shillings in taxes. It led to lifestyle audits. It led, in fact, to some people being interdicted. So, if my plea is like this, don't just accuse willy-nilly. Be ready to prove so that we can take action, because we cannot take action if you just say people are stealing.
So if I have an issue against any employee of KRA, I can go on to this one. It's iWhistle.kra.go.ke.
Exactly.
And it tells me here, don't worry, you're safe.
Yes.
As you report tax offenses, this site keeps your identity 100% anonymous. You may be asked to share personal details in certain proceedings, know and exercise your rights at all times. Correct. So this is what should you report: tax evasion, bribery, fraud, conflict of interest, abuse of office, concealment, diversion of goods, others. And the process works this way. You set up an account. I thought I'm anonymous. You can create an anonymous ID and password for future use, I see. So will I get a report on the proceedings of a case that I reported?
Yes.
Because I already have an account then. So will I get some feedback?
You will get some feedback. It has to be very, structured in a manner that doesn't compromise you, but also the rights of the accused must be respected. But we take it very, very seriously. As I said, in the last financial year, we got 833 cases. That's what I was looking for.
Right.
And that led us to investigate as many as 255 staff members.
Right.
So we take it very, very seriously. Let me go real quick. The Dalma says the president promised reduction in taxes. When will it happen?
Yes.
Yeah.
I honestly think, and you've heard us say that as the economy recovers, we will, and it actually happened in the December tax amendments. There was some reliefs provided in. The direction is to continue looking for reliefs. Were they large enough, perhaps to be really properly noticeable, perhaps not, but relief. For example,
which precedes the other? Is it economic recovery and then tax relief, or tax relief and then economic recovery? I'm not as the chair.
It's an interplay. It's an interplay. I don't think that only one can precede the other. And again, want to say we are listening. I guess one thing that came up in Bunge la Wananchi, and one Kenyan asked the question, what about spouses? Because look, we're paying housing levy, my spouse and I, he was explaining. I mean, in the end, we'll need only one house. So why are you charging both of us?
Yep.
Right.
And that is a really,
Valid
and we
question.
look forward to, making that improvement in the next cycle. So, when did housing levy become
So when are we getting the tax relief first before we go to the housing levy? When are we getting tax relief so
When
we
should
can
we
feel?
expect this?
No, this is what I said, that in December, for example, there was some reliefs. I would expect either in this cycle of the finance bill or certainly in the next cycle that, and that's the direction the minister has indicated, we must at every turn see what relief, because we agree with Kenyans that those particularly with pay slips are squeezed. When did this housing become? Now remember what happened. There was a court case that basically said, look, this thing discriminative because it's only targeting people who are in formal employment. You have to do it for all Kenyans if you are going to do it, and that's really the changeover to it being a general tax.
Right.
Now, at what point will we have enough stock of houses, or is it a perpetual thing? I don't think it's a perpetual thing. My own expectation is that is one of the areas where, in the not distant future, we should be able to walk away from.
We're going to a break. And you'll respond to this, a number of questions on Facebook. Mark Anthony Tamasha says, why issue penalties for not filing tax returns? Do you think it's barbaric? Mary Nganga says, returns should be made easier online, not a matter of rounds and lastly can't succeed, or is creating jobs to those who file others' returns. Falis, why should employed individuals file tax returns and they are fined if they have forgotten? I mean, it's just too much. That's what they that's what they say. And I'll read some more when after this break.
Penalties. Look, it's an obligation, and the way the structure of it is like that.
Penalties, and then those penalties accrue interest.
They accrue interest, but for example, right now,
there's an amnesty.
The law allows us to remove the penalties and interest provided you pay the principal. So please come, let us deal with it. Returns should be easier online. I agree, and this is what we're talking about. Simplification, digitization, because we agree with the Kenyan who is saying returns should be made easier.
Should we expect this to happen? We are now filing our returns. It's still as difficult as it was last year. I don't know, it's called a P9. Or T9.
Why should employed
individuals be penalized for forgetting to file returns?
First of all, it's why should they file?
Yes.
And why should they
be penalized?
Where we are with this is in the same direction as ITIMS, that, and Mariam spoke to this question earlier, that we as KRA, in fact, you added, why can't we give you an alert on mobile to say, can you check, for example, that this is the correct, and if it is correct, press return. And that's where we should be. Yeah. That's where we are going.
So in the meantime, okay, let's take our break. It's 25 minutes to 9. We are speaking to the KRA chairman, Ndiritu Muriithi. If you've got questions, please call in. What's the number again, Jackso? 0719?
038858. 0719 038858.
Yep. Call in and we'll patch you directly to the chairman of KRA. Back shortly. Please call in and let's hear you asking all your questions to the chairman of the Kenya Revenue Authority, Ndiritu Muriithi, who's been our guest, and also sending questions on YouTube and Facebook and X. We'll be reading all of them and what he said. Chairman, at the beginning, our first interview on this show was your boss, the KRA, not the KRA chairman, but the National Treasury CS, John Badi. When he was here, we asked him about, this completely fluid taxation. So every year you are finding new taxes coming in. And this is what he said about that. He said it was wrong for us to actually have this kind of strategy. Take a listen.
Because this administration came in at a time when times were difficult. It was very difficult to mobilize domestic revenue, to be able to meet the expenditure that was required. But again, I want to put it that it was not the right strategy to introduce very many changes in our tax regime and tax rates. And that is what almost led. You see, the push, you cannot push increase of taxation by 300 billion shillings in one financial year. You would cause a revolution. And that is exactly what we
That's what happened last year.
Yes. So we have taken a decision as a government that is not the direction we will take anymore. And we have national tax policy, which talks about predictability and certainty. So we are not going to introduce new taxes that would be, let me call it offensive, or would be punitive.
So he says no new punitive taxes. Now, you can say the keyword here is the punitive.
The punitive, yes.
I didn't say no new taxes at all.
I said no new punitive.
3 messages from what the minister is saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
One, and it goes back to the question you had with it about how much can you actually increase. And I did explain 12 to 15% is a reasonable expectation. 20%, that's the point he's making. If can you grow with 300, 400 billion per year? You will be pushing people quite to the corner. Predictability. Should we change measures every year? Yeah. So it's the same key message that our taxes, we want our taxes to be predictable. So that's the idea of medium term. And we want the increase also to be realistic. And the best way to get a realistic tax increase is, in fact, if the economy is performing very well. But that circles back to an idea we haven't discussed at all. I want to give me a moment only, which is this question of sentiment or confidence. Now, and it goes also to issues of trust. Look, the reality is that the economic numbers today point to an improving situation. I'm not saying it is...
It's felt
It's
on
an
ground.
improving.
It's that it is fixed. I'm saying they point to an improving situation. Like what? Take exchange rate. Exchange rate has been steady at about 129 to the dollar for more than 6 months. I myself would have hoped it would go slightly, but it has been steady is the point. Inflation has again, core inflation has been steady at 2% for more than 6 months, and overall inflation is at 3.5%. Interest rates are coming down. Are they where we want them to be? No, they're not. And I think that's why you see, even in today's, if you look at the dailies, you see central bank advertising or showing an ad showing what is the average interest rate, because they're trying to do many things to bring down interest rates. All of those, so low inflation, steady exchange rate, declining interest rates, they point to favorable or improving economic conditions. But we as Kenyans, most of us are not really seeing that. Yeah? And this is a question then now of sentiment. What drives sentiment? What is it that could happen so that Kenyans are more hopeful? And I can tell you, business confidence is very, very important because it drives decisions about investments, about hiring, about expansion of operations. The same with consumer confidence is very, very important because it what drives us as individuals, whether we are going to spend or save. All of those things, where we are in terms of our sentiment, actually does not correspond with where the economic numbers are. Do I have an answer? I don't. But I think it's a big thing in the room today. And if sentiment was positive, you will actually see faster economic recovery.
Is it a political question, Ndiritu?
It's partly a political question. I saw one time as a student in Australia where government did a whole campaign to try and move the country out of negativity. So it's a political question. Obviously, it's so interesting. You would think that the fact that both political formations are now working together, it should imply less political contestation and perhaps should help us focus on the real things. But I fear that's not exactly how it's being interpreted.
Of course it's not, because the feeling among the public, and we had a long conversation here yesterday, was that the political conversations taking place are by a cabal that is trying to save itself. And that's the political players, which brings me to the question about you and your politics, right? You are an opposition figure.
Indeed.
You are campaigning for Azimio. In fact, you are the chairman of the Azimio presidential campaign.
Indeed.
Okay. June last year, you were raising a voice with the rest of Kenyans on the issues that you felt were not going well economically. and even challenging the figures that are coming out of the government and what the government was saying in terms of sentiment on the improvement of the economy, on cost of living, and so on and so forth. Now you are in government. Why?
Because...
Why are you in government as chairing KRA, where you don't have a say in what happens in the National Treasury, in what happens in the political direction of the country, in what happens in the decisions that are made in Parliament or by the executive as a whole?
Well, first and foremost, in the end, government is many players. Government is a team, so that there's no one person who will have a say at KRA, at National Treasury, at Parliament, like that. Now, why? In fact, I should start by saying, not only was I raising voice, twice I was arrested for raising voice. But why, as a person, did I take the view to work in this broad-based government? For the simple reason that we, as leaders, we really do have to step forward and fix this country together. It's not going to fix itself. Now, coalitions or teams working together is not necessarily that we are not rivals. As a matter of fact, a very famous book is Abraham Lincoln's Team of Rivals, where Abraham, upon becoming president, he appointed as the key cabinet ministers all his political rivals who had been contesting for the presidency with him. And it is that team of rivals that made history and changed the course of America. So it is plausible for people who have been competing to work in one team to achieve a particular objective or a particular goal.
It starts from the top. It starts from Abe believing that if he brings in the rival voices, he will listen to all of them and it will improve.
Indeed.
That's not the situation we are in right now, Ndiritu, in this country. This is a forced
marriage,
well,
by the citizens.
Regardless of the original force that created this circumstance, the fact of the matter is that the president, in fact, dismissed his government to provide the opportunity to bring on board other voices, and he has proceeded to do so. It is my view, as a leader, that all of us aspiring or practicing or trying to be leaders, this is the time to step forward and fix our country together.
Do you have confidence that the leadership at the top is actually aligned to what you're saying?
I have confidence
that now the attitude at the top is aligned towards listening to all voices, all competing voices, and including listening to the citizens and addressing the citizens' concerns?
I would say, particularly listening to the citizens is a key question for leadership. And see, when you look at the economic numbers that I was talking about, those are factual. Those are factual. That inflation is low, the exchange rate has stabilized, and interest rates are coming down. Now, you see, you may not need to like Ndiritu or any other political leader to react to those economic fundamentals. And this is really the point that we must all communicate to Kenyans, that look, it's about you as an economic player, what is good for you, what is good for your business, not necessarily that you now love or agree with a particular political leader.
Right.
There's
two questions of back to KRA, but I know there's still a bit more to cover on that front. There's a question about benchmarks. What are they? This is someone on YouTube asking. What is, KRA has been killing businesses through unpredictable raising of taxes, although that's the Treasury, but you get the point. Currently, they've introduced what is called a benchmark.
It's like this. First, let me just start by saying it's a good thing, and you'll see why in a moment.
Okay.
Most traders may not be able to import goods that fill a container. So how do you bring your goods? Trying to be helpful, we introduced this system, not just when Ndiritu came, this has been going on for some time. We introduced this system of consolidators. So they are recognized consolidators who, in the source markets, you buy your goods, Eric does, and I do, and so on, and we give them to a consolidator so that they can be in one container full, and that makes it plausible and possible for somebody with a shop in River Road or in Githurai to import something. The question is like this. In this container now, there are your goods, and his goods, and my goods, and several other people.
Right.
There are different kinds of goods. So how do we tax? How do we levy customs, duties on the goods in that container?
Yes.
Now, to make it easier, so this benchmark is about a benchmark frat rate. You understand? That when that container, about 2.5 million shillings, and you pay a frat rate now applied to all those goods inside that. That was done to make it easy for you, the importer. Remember what has been happening is that then the consolidator pays that frat rate or that benchmark rate and recovers from the 7 of you who are sharing a container.
Yeah.
And that's what the benchmark is. So it's a good thing. As we move to the future,
I'm importing 1,000 hand towels valued at maybe a little over 100,000 shillings. And someone else is just importing one vehicle that's also in that container that's worth
10 million.
Yeah, 10 million shillings.
Well, they should recover pro rata, but we went further. And you recall, just here at the main railway facility here, there's a national deconsolidation center. What is the idea? That when the consolidator brings the container, where is the place where they can put these goods so that they put yours in one bin, in a shelf, mine there, and we then, the actual importers, can pay for our specific goods. And that is happening at the National Deconsolidation Center.
Okay.
There's a call we want to take. Yes.
Sure.
Quick one from Ngugi Chege in Embu. Good morning. Kiambu, sorry.
Not Embu.
Kiambu.
How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I first of all, I want to thank Mr. Latif for the work he has been doing.
Karibu sana.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Tumefurahi sana mkuu na sisi huko kule umetoka na now we see you and we see you are bringing us professionals. There's one thing that I wanted to say that I think is very relevant.
Okay.
You're separating two issues that should not be separated at all. You're talking about taxes only, and you have a very good gentleman there, but taxes are connected with something else. Kama nikienda kwa duka, ninaenda kununua mkate. Sasa mimi napatiana pesa na ngoja mkate. If I don't get that loaf of bread, tomorrow I will not bring my money. Because it is not that I just wanted to bring money. So connect these two things. How the money is spent and me giving the money. We have the money. But kama sikupata mkate jana, hautaniona tena. I will go and keep my money. I could even keep it in a safe place. Siku ile nitapata mtu anakona mkate, hayo nitalete. So this gentleman here, this gentleman here who is very capable, should have another gentleman next to him who tells us, this one will tell us how he collects, and he appears to know his job, and the other guy should come and tell us how he is spending that money.
Thank you.
If you do that, you will not have a problem with us. But one end is not working and the other end is working, and you are becoming sophisticated. Na ukweli ndio tunataka. We just want the truth.
Thank you,
Gogi.
It comes back to the same.
It is the same. Thank you, Gogi. It's the same point. Can we link taxes
to the services?
To the services.
Yes.
It's the same point.
So what's your message then? How do you go? How do you take this to the board, and how do you take it to the executive?
Well, how do we take it to the executive? First and foremost is that our minister or our cabinet secretary we must ask him to explain to his colleagues in cabinet and the whole executive this particular sentiment, that Kenyans want to see a better linkage so that they can see their taxes working for them. On the other hand, in communicating with Kenyans, and Mr. Ngugi, I want to say to Mr. Ngugi, that everything, Mr. Ngugi, you see in the Republic, if there is a road that has been done anywhere, anytime, if there is a school that was ever built, if there is a hospital that was, all of these things come from taxes. So what taxes do is there. Should they be used better to provide more? The answer is yes.
Yes. And no, when we talk about a road, when we see a road, yes, we saw a road in the Kibaki years with $1 trillion shillings collection, and we saw the roads.
Yes.
Now we are at 2.6, 2.4 last year.
Right.
Trillion
Shillings collection,
Yes.
and we are feeling, no.
The number of roads or the kilometers of road are not
it's not matching. And especially now when you hear that out of that 2.4 trillion shillings, over 1-point-something trillion shillings, close to 1.6, 1.8 trillion, is going to repay a debt for some road that could have, for a loan that we borrowed to build some road that we don't see. You see, it comes back into this. You're a politician as well as a technocrat in this particular position. The message to the government is not for them to push back and say, but you see, we are building houses. You see, we are improving education. There's a new funding model. You see, we are now doing healthcare. That's not the message that citizens want.
Yes.
It's not tangible.
Two things.
There's no direct correlation between how much money you are taking from me versus how much I am getting back.
Yeah.
Indeed. And it is a fair, it's a fair sentiment for Kenyans to ask. And I quickly respond in the following manner. The direct correlation may never really end up like that. Because remember, you see, a road, for instance, think about the quantum, the amount of money required to build a road or a hospital. So we may never be able to show you, Mariam, that your pay-as-you-earn is the one we used to make this particular hospital in Kamukunji. It may never be like that.
I'll feel it when I'm driving.
But you will feel
a
higher quality of service, a better quality of service.
Just so, because we have another call on the line. Brian is also on the line, wants to ask a question to the KRA chair, Mr. Ndiritu. Morning, Brian.
Good morning, Mariam.
Please tell Mr. Ndiritu, give us your query. Ama, is it a comment?
It's a query. It touches on pay-as-you-earn and its remittance from employers. A while back, I used to work somewhere in Nairobi, and they deducted my pay at source. But to my astonishment, I got some negatives from my KRA when I wanted to file my return. So after inquiring, I realized that my employer didn't submit my deductions to KRA. So the company went under, and now KRA wants me to pay that amount. So my question is, if you know where the problem was, why must I also pay the amount yet I was deducted at source? It's like I'm paying twice.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to know the direction, because I went to KRA, and the person who used to assist me told me that it's above him, and probably I pay and then I talk to the management, and then they reimburse later. You know, that's back and forth.
Yes.
And our history with KRA is once money is in, there's nowhere it's going out.
That's true. All right.
Yeah, so I wanted to know how should we handle that, because now I can't get a TCC because there's a negative on my KRA pin.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we had spoken even about it before.
Indeed.
And you said, the burden of the tax is on the individual, but it's a good point. It has been deducted at source. So I have fulfilled my burden. Then why do I have to pay again when my employer, whoever, did not remit? And then again, why didn't KRA let me know much earlier that these remittances aren't happening? But you've spoken to that one already. Let's go to why is this double payment? It's a punishment.
And frankly, one has to, my heart goes out to Brian listening to his circumstance, and I would encourage him. I don't know if it's okay for you to let us have his contacts or at least give him.
Let me see if he's still on the line. Brian, are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm still on the line.
You're okay with us sharing your number with Ndiritu?
It's okay.
Sawa.
Okay. So what I would like to do, Brian, is reach out to you after the show, so that we, the management can take a look at your specific case and understand it and see what we can do to provide relief. So I think we leave it like that.
There's a lot of other Brians there.
Indeed. That's what I want to speak to.
Yeah.
That's what I want to speak to. So Brian, that's the way we are going to do it. I may not be able to make a ruling on air because I don't know the details of the fact, but I hear you. I hear your pain. We will do something. The team here will give me your contact. More broadly, the feedback certainly, Mariam, is that we as KRA need to do something better. So, and I know there is a penalty for delayed payments or delayed remittance of pay as you earn by employers, but the feedback I'm getting is that it is happening a lot more than perhaps we think it is happening, and it's an area we need to take a deep look and reform it so that employees don't get into the circumstance that Brian is talking about.
Right, and that they don't have to then pay again if it does happen.
What are the numbers that people can call? Because there are very many people, just like Brian is saying. So I was employed, my employer has already closed shop, they're no longer in existence, and I am being told to pay the deduction, and I was already deducted and have this case. What people who have issues such as these ones, and they'd like to address them with KRA, how do they reach out? And when they go to an officer, like Brian is saying, and that officer says, sasa hii hatuwezi deal na wewe, kwanza labda ulipe kwanza, alafu tuone vile tutaaddress ukipeleka kwa mdosi.
Well, I mean, that is not a good service experience. Where can you reach us? 0711 099 999. It is a call center, because once we understand the issue, then the back end, so this is channeled to, because remember we have various, we have customs, domestic, like that. But the contact center is 0711 099 999. You can also write to us on email, callcenter@kra.go.ke. Once again, callcenter@kra.go.ke. We are also on X, formerly Twitter, which is @KRA Care. We are on Facebook, which is @Kenya Revenue Authority. We are on LinkedIn, again @Kenya Revenue Authority. Any and all of these channels, once we understand the issue, we get the right people in the back end to deal with it. And that's what will happen in the case of Mr. Brian. And once again, my apologies for his pain and inconvenience.
Okay. So it's about 4 minutes to after the top of the hour, but we've got one final caller, who's Joseph calling in from Nakuru. Joseph, good morning. Is he online? Joseph, are you online? We had Joseph from Nakuru who wanted to ask a question, but just this final one from Moses Joroge, who says, a worker earning 100,000 shillings is taxed at the rate of 30%, and a landlord earning 100,000 shillings from rent is taxed at 10%. Is that fair?
Moses, I suppose really I would have to agree with you, it's not fair. I should also tell you that rental income is very much work in progress. That there are many rental properties whose owners don't pay the requisite tax. We encourage them to voluntarily come forward. Hopefully, Kenyans can hear what we are trying to explain. Ultimately, and it goes back to this question somebody spoke about weaponization. The tax laws are they are quite strict. And it can go all the way to prosecution. And I think you have seen a number of instances, perhaps high-profile prosecutions. That is actually the law. We prefer not to get to that point. In fact, we prefer to rehabilitate taxpayers. Our general attitude is not that let's try and punish you by prosecuting you. Our attitude is that how can we work with you so that you are a tax compliant citizen, individual, or business? If you volunteer, like take now this tax, if you volunteer today, then in fact, there's like an automatic immunity from prosecution. So if you come and say, look, I wasn't paying before, but here I am. That's it. We are not going to start saying, now let's pursue you. Now, this is the best time to do it because there is tax amnesty.
Right.
So you come and say, look, I wasn't paying before, here I am.
Right.
I assess myself this way.
Right.
Then
we move. Thank you, Ndiritu. Sorry, there's just Joseph who really needs to ask a question on persons with disabilities. Joseph, what's your question? Good morning. Aina shida. Sawa sawa.
Sauti yangu si mzuri sana, na disability.
Tunakuelewa.
Na niko exempted na KRA from Taxman mfanyikazi wa serikali. Yet my employer amekuwa akinikata tax, amepeana kwa KRA for 2 years. Aya nimejaribu kupatilia for refund, KRA wananiambia niongee na employer afanye consolidation. Sasa nikienda kwa employer ananiambia amefanya consolidation. Sasa nimekuwa stranded hapo, nifanyaje?
Nakuelewa. Tumekupata Joseph, asante. Wacha Ndiritu akujibu hapo. Yeah.
Asante.
Joseph, ukikubali, naomba kwamba wenzetu hapa watu, oh my goodness.
Hopefully he's still able to listen
to hear us.
We have his number.
Yeah. If he could agree, I would again plead that he lets you give us his contact and we pursue his matter and resolve it. It may also help us. Just like you see this issue of Brian, certainly for me, it has opened my eyes to something that in the relationship perhaps is not working properly. And you raised it earlier. So I would plead with Joseph, if it's okay with him, you give us his contacts so that we reach out to him and resolve the matter with him and his employer.
But also maybe something that speaks to the broader system so that persons with disabilities don't have to chase down KRA to get these refunds and rebates, right?
Indeed.
It should be automatic, I would think.
It should be. There is a step there that requires sort of confirmation. That's why the National Council. So if somebody has an impairment, they have to get some kind of certification.
Right.
So we as KRA, we are not the ones who do that, but that is a necessary step. So that we know we are dealing with an actual case. I hear him. Please, if he agrees, allow us to have his contact, and we will reach out to him and resolve his matter.
Right.
Tell your good people at KRA that such an issue. Somebody has come and they've said, look, I'm here. I am a person with disability. Maybe they've even presented all that certification and they're showing I have been deducted, I need a refund. Now, starting to send them on this runaround of get to employer, consolidation and all.
It's not on. Yeah. And I want to just say to the Republic, because we have done it already internally, I mean, our expectation of our management and our staff is a very, very professional approach to what we're doing, is for us to be customer-focused, and we are tightening performance management in that direction. So that we truly are a service organization responding to the needs of our clients, as Joseph and Brian have put on the table.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Ndiritu Muriithi, Chairman of the Kenya Revenue Authority. And thank you to all who sent in their questions on our social media platforms and those who called. We had an issue with our phones for a bit, and that's why we didn't take as many calls for a while. But at least it came back and we picked a couple of more calls. Asante.
Why, it's not bad.
Thank you very much. Keep it here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. We know it's what we call Miss Me With That. I think you'll want to listen to that one.
Mystery?
Miss Me With That.
Miss Me With That.
Yes. And Mariam has an issue, a pet peeve, and a peeve that she'd like to raise with our national leaders, particularly those in the opposition.
That's right.
Yeah. Keep it here for that.
Asante.